oh, I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of what I want to create. I'm in charge of what I want to promote. I'm in charge of what I want to allow. And on the flip side, let's just say you're in a beautiful relationship, like one that it's like you've wanted this your whole life. There's a great match. You feel so much love for this person and this experience you're having and you're creating. You did that too. You you set your life up so that you allowed and created the opportunity and the conditions for that person to come into your life.
This is Heal Your Part, and I'm Jennifer Herrera. I'm on a mission to help you heal what's in the way so you can see yourself the way your soul does. Because when you heal your part, everything shifts.
Welcome to the Heal Your Part podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Herrera, and I'm excited to dig into an episode that is absolutely 100% impromptu. Every year, I attend my church's annual conference, and this year the theme was on the inner master, which is essentially like our inner awareness, our inner world, our inner knowing. It's something that I talk about all the time, and it has become one of the biggest points of growth and I like to say leverage, because I feel like a lot of what's going on in the human experience is feeling like we are at the affect of everything that's going around us that often we don't control. But we do have control over what we allow to take up space in our minds and our heads, what thoughts we allow to recycle in our mind. We have control over all of that, but often we don't know that, or we're not conscious of it, or we're not really trained. We're not taught about this dimension of being a human being, which sometimes boggles my mind, because I imagine a world where more of us, or where all of us were receiving this kind of education and becoming more aware of ourselves if we were like through the K through 12 education system, where we became more connected to our dimensionality and what goes on in our body, what goes on in our minds, how we do have control over our thoughts. We do have control over what we allow our mind to hold time with, to spend time with. And there's all kinds of teachings out there that are available to help us work with that. Meditation is actually one of the most basic available, from my perspective, tools to help with what's going on in the mind, because meditation, from my perspective, one of the simplest ways to describe it is sitting with yourself and noticing your thoughts. And each time you notice yourself thinking thoughts or thinking about your thoughts, you just bring your attention back to your breath. So there's something really interesting about that. It's a practice of that kind of relationship of noticing and coming back, noticing and coming back. And that is essentially meditation. A teacher explained it that way one time, and I just never thought of it any differently, because it made total sense to me. It's the process of noticing our thoughts, but coming back to the breath and releasing the thoughts so that we can come into more time and energy and space into the experience of nothingness, of just noticing our breath and starting to become more aware of our body and the rise and fall of our breath. And eventually, the more we practice, eventually we start to almost leave our bodies. We don't fall asleep, but we feel like we've maybe become unconscious physically. But anyways, my point in bringing that up is that this idea of our inner knowing, our inner awareness, our inner life, our inner dimension, which really for me is also part of why I talk about inner mastery, because it becomes the way that we can take our life to to all kinds of places if we know how to be with ourselves, how to relate with ourselves, how to, because before I go down this rabbit hole, to connect back to the first two episodes of this podcast where I introduced the podcast and what's behind the podcast, what's the motivation for the podcast, and some of the kind of foundational orientations of we are not humans with souls, we are souls having a human experience, and that how we be, who we are, is very much a reflection of our thoughts and our beliefs and our judgments, all of which came about through watching others, modeling them, or making decisions about what things meant to us from infancy. So then we become a collection of all of these thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that then become our personality. And many of us don't know that that's how we become who we are. Because I think if we did, then we would see that the other opportunity there, especially if you are not satisfied with your experience in your life, you could start to look at that. You could start to look at, what do I allow to take up space? Like what's like renting space in my head? And is that helping me? Is it like regenerating me? Is it serving me? Or is it like taking life force away from me? And it also reminds me of Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was a renowned psychologist that spent time in the concentration camps in Holocaust Germany and survived, and was actually a very young doctor. And he made note of what he observed, and he ended up going on to invent different types of therapies and wrote about this. And his book that's called Man's Search for Meaning is a very powerful read. I highly recommend it. It's not a very long read, but parts of it are a little intense, but it's profound because he obviously offers a very powerful testimonial and context from his experience in the concentration camps. But he talks about that we can be, I'm very much paraphrasing, everything can be taken from us. We can be stripped of everything. But what we always have control over, what we always have dominion over, is what we allow to hold space in our minds, how we choose to relate with it. For example, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of the biggest pieces of data that he noticed that informed a lot of his hypotheses and learnings that he took was that the people who basically gave up because of those horrific situations and experiences they were going through, those that gave up were the ones who did not survive in many cases. The ones that did survive were the people that did not allow the situation to take over their minds, which is a very hard thing to do, because if we don't know, which I don't believe that we know, and it's still not part of like primary education, that we actually have the ability to do this. And if we were taught this and learned this, and when we learned how to like strengthen that muscle and develop that muscle and recognize that, we would have a lot more people feeling empowered, because we would realize that our boss or our parent or our lover or our kid or whoever doesn't actually have control over how we're feeling, that we do, and that we choose how to respond. Now, a lot of what you've heard MO, our modus operandi, is essentially how we show up when we're not really paying attention, when we're just kind of being ourselves. When people say, oh, I'm just wired that way, we know now that's not true. Like, you can unwire it. You wired it, but you can unwire it. You're not that way for life. It's a choice. This opportunity of becoming aware that this is your biggest point of leverage is so powerful. So I'm in this annual conference, and this year it's about the inner master. And I'm always so uplifted when I go to these experiences. Well, because first of all, I feel just grateful and connected with the opportunity to invest in myself. I also appreciate coming within my community, my spiritual community. I appreciate the opportunity to be in that shared energy of which we're all choosing to uplift, So there's a vibration, there's a frequency going on there that is very powerful. You know that saying where two or more are gathered. And in this case, this year, it's about the inner master, which is really that we all have an inner master. It's not for just certain people or special people or spiritual people. We all have an inner master. The thing that really inspired me to want to jump on here and create this episode was a statement that I have learned through this course of study that I was reminded of this weekend that I think is very powerful, and you can look at it in different ways. But it's a statement that if you so choose to subscribe to it or just sit with it and ponder it and maybe look at it as it relates to your life, it could transform how you orientate yourself to your life. Because if you're feeling at the affect, if you feel victim, if you feel, even if you've been victimized, if you allow that to inhabit and hold space and to literally just stay your consciousness, that's what will define your entire existence. That's why healing and processing and learning how to address how we've been harmed or how we've harmed ourselves, because all of those things can occur. If we don't address them and heal them, they will define our lives. There's just no way around it. Nobody is spared. This is part of the human experience. So the statement is, we create, promote, or allow everything in our life. So how I would own that, because I think that's important, is I create, promote, or allow everything that's happening in my life. Create, promote, or allow. So that essentially infers that you have 100% responsibility, 100% dominion over your life and over your life experience. And if you want to look at the polarity, and what I mean by that is like the positive, negative, because there is duality in being in the human realm, that means that you create, promote, or allow everything in your life that you struggle with, that you judge, that you wish was not present, that you wish was different, that you are not satisfied with. You create, promote, or allow all of that. And I'll share a couple of examples. And you create, promote, or allow everything that's wonderful and beautiful and magnificent and sweet and juicy and delicious. It goes both ways. One way to look at this also is like the law of attraction. So if you're somebody who's open to that idea, which to me it's a law, it's called a law for a reason, but we are all energetic vibrations. And there's been plenty of research on this, and actually I think experiments that talk about this, and I'm not going to get into that part. But what I'm talking about is that essentially the vibration, the place from which we're coming from, what we're emitting, our energetic vibration, which often is coming from the thoughts we allow to hold space in our consciousness and our mind, that's what we attract more of. So it's the same thing as we create, promote, or allow. So for example, if you are not happy, let's just say in a relationship, you attracted that person into your life. You created that experience or co-created it, and you've allowed it. So if you're in a state of dissatisfaction, or you're not happy, or the person is not maybe treating you the way you want to be treated, if you've been accepting that, if you've been living in that for a time period that's longer than you would have liked, my offering to you is that you have created, promoted, and allowed that to be what it is. The point of me saying that isn't to say it's all your fault. That's not the point. The point is that it's a point of freedom. It's a point of sovereignty. It's a point of power, because then you can recognize, oh, I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of what I want to create. I'm in charge of what I want to promote. I'm in charge of what I want to allow. And on the flip side, let's just say you're in a beautiful relationship, like one that it's like you've wanted this your whole life. There's a great match. You feel so much love for this person and this experience you're having and you're creating. You did that too. You you set your life up so that you allowed and created the opportunity and the conditions for that person to come into your life. You're creating the experience with them. You're co-creating the relationship. And in order for any of us to have what it is that we believe that we want, we have to allow it to come in. We have to be receptive. Often what gets in our way is that underneath what we want are beliefs that we don't deserve it, or that we don't know what we'll do with it, or whatever the conditioning is, the story is that comes through you based on your orientation or your origin story. In order for you to allow and create and promote a relationship that brings you joy and happiness, that's all part of your energy and your vibration as well. So often, if that's what you're experiencing, you've done some healing work, you have grown, and or you don't have some of those core wounds that a lot of humans have when you don't feel safe or you don't feel worthy. But a lot of us, I mean, every person has gone through trauma, and we all relate to our life in different ways. And I'm never going to put a measuring stick on trauma in this podcast because it's all specific to each person. And I don't believe any of us get through this place without it. It's part of the human experience. It's part of the learning. It's part of what I believe is Earth is a school and we came here to learn. But my point in bringing this up and sharing these two examples is to share this idea that that we create, promote, or allow anything and everything that's happening in our life. Now, that might trigger something like if something terrible happened to you and you've been victimized, how did I attract that? How did I allow that? How did I promote that? And that's not what I'm really talking about here, because there are victim situations. The opportunity becomes from that how you allow that situation to rest inside of you, how you choose to work with that and heal that so that you can free yourself from it. And I'm not going to get into too much of the deeper mystical pieces here because that could be a whole other conversation, but that's not really the point of at least the dialogue that I'm having right now. And the point I'm really getting at is that there is freedom in that for you. There is leverage in that for you. If you choose to look at your life through the lens of, I am in charge. I have 100% responsibility over my life, my experience of my life, and how I allow my life to be formed and created, and how I want to think about it, relate with it, and orientate myself to it. That doesn't mean that you can control the world and everything's always going to be the way you want it to be. But ultimately, the situations that you find yourself in, whether you consider them positive or negative, in most cases, you created, promoted, or allowed it to happen. So it's just a way for you to see yourself and your life, to allow you another dimension of being able to recognize that you are a sovereign being, that you do have agency, that no matter what's going on in your life, you do have agency inside yourself on how you want to relate with your life. And when you start to adopt that perspective, your experience of your life will take a significant shift, because you won't be feeling like a victim. You won't be thinking that you have no control over anything and your life is just at the mercy of whatever the storyline is of the day, because all of us could feel that way in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's challenging to be a human being, no doubt, but you came here. You chose this life. And so I'm offering this for your consideration. What would it look like? What would it feel like? How might your life shift? How might your experience of your life and yourself change if you were willing to take this kind of radical responsibility for yourself and for your human experience. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. I wanted to share this, and I hope that it made sense. I hope I articulated it in a way that landed, and I gave at least a couple of examples of how that looks, how that can show up, and how you could start to apply that lens to your life. All right, thank you for listening. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you're choosing to be a part of this conversation.
Hey there, if this message resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with somebody who might need it as well. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the Heal Your Part podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube so that you get notified when a new episode is out. And if you're ready to explore your relationship with money on a deeper level, take the Money Mirror Quiz. It's a free tool to help you see how your emotional patterns are influencing how you create, how you receive, and how you trust in abundance. You can find the link in the show notes. You can also connect with me on TikTok on @IamJenniferHerrera and on Instagram at @selfmasterywithjennifer and also @healyourpart for more reflections and real conversations about wealth, healing, and self-leadership. Thank you again for being here. I so appreciate you and your time and energy and for being a part of this conversation with me. Take care.